Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. 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 Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yashodanandana Braj Janarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. 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 ISKCON Guruvata ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, Untitled Chapter ki jai. Haribol. Reading from Sri Prabhupada Lila Amrita, chapter The Lame Man and Blind Man. It seems, said Harisaya, that it will take several generations before we can become purified. If one is sincere, Prabhupada replied, he can become purified even within one generation. That same evening, as Prabhupada prepared to stay up all night translating, he was still thinking of Madhudrisha. Nevertheless, he turned to translating the text in the chapter called The Elephant Gajendra's Crisis. The chapter told about the king of elephants, Gajendra, who lived on the heavenly planets. One day, Gajendra was bathing in the river along with his wives, when suddenly a crocodile attacked. The crocodile fastened his jaws on Gajendra's leg, and although the elephant was very powerful, he could not release himself from the strong grip of the crocodile while in the water. Thereafter, Prabhupada dictated, because of being pulled into the water and fighting for many long years, the elephant became diminished in his mental, physical, and sensual strength. The crocodile, on the contrary, being an animal of the water, increased in enthusiasm, physical strength, and sensual power. I can do it very quickly, Prabhupada said, but I have to meditate how to prepare it for the common man. How could he convey the significance of this event, which happened millions of years ago between two animals on a heavenly planet? How to make it clear and understandable and capture the essence of the significant Sanskrit words and the Parampara comments of acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti, Sanatana Goswami, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. In the quiet solitude of his room, Srila Prabhupada began speaking his purport. In the fighting between the elephant and the crocodile, the difference was that although the elephant was extremely powerful, he was in a foreign place in the water. During 1,000 years of fighting, he could not get any food, and under the circumstances, his bodily strength diminished. And because his bodily strength diminished, his mind also became weak, and his senses less powerful. The crocodile, however, being an animal of the water, had no difficulties. He was getting food, and that was therefore getting mental strength and central encouragement. Thus, while the elephant became reduced in strength, the crocodile became more and more powerful. Now from this we may take the lesson that in our fight with Maya, we should not be in a position in which our strength, enthusiasm and senses will be unable to fight vigorously. Our Krishna consciousness movement has actually declared war against illusory energy, in which all the living entities are rotting in a false understanding of civilization. The soldiers in this Krishna consciousness movement must always possess physical strength, enthusiasm and central power. To keep themselves fit, they must therefore place themselves in a normal condition of life. What constitutes a normal condition will not be the same for everyone, Prabhupada continued, and therefore there are divisions of Varna, Shram, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, it is advised that no one takes sannyas. From this we can understand that in this age the sannyas ashram is forbidden because people are not strong. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed us an example of taking sannyas at the age of 24 years. But even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya advised Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be extremely careful because he had taken sannyas at an early age. For preaching we give young boys sannyas, but actually it is being experienced that they are not fit for sannyas. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, Text 25, it's the last text in the chapter. Na Vikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya Samyena Vitabimatis Tavapi Mahar Navikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya Samyena Vitabimatis Tavapi Mahavimanat Swakitanti Mudrin Namshati Adhuradapi Shulapani Navikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya Samyena Vitabimatis Tavapi Mahavimanat Swakitanti Madrin Nakshati Adhuradapi Shulapani Navikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya Samyena Vitabimatis Tavapi Mahavimanat Swakitanti Madrin Nakshati Udharat Api Shalapani.
Navikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya Samyena Vitabimatis Tavapi Mahavimanat Swakitanti Madrin Nakshati Adurat Api Salapani
Vishvasurat Sakyasya
Navikriya Vishvasurit Sakasya
Samyena Vitabnivatis Tavapi
Samyena Vitabnivatis Tavapi
Mahadvimanat Sakri Madri
Mahadvimanat Sakritati Madri
Shaki Adorat Api Swapani
Namshaki Adorat Api Swapani.
Navikriya Vishva Surit Sakasya
Navikriya Vishvasurit Sakasya
Samyena Vitapimatis Viktavapi
Samyena Vitapimatis Tavapi
Mahadvimanat Swapritati Madri
Mahadvimanat Swapritati Madri
Nakshati Adurat Api Shurapani
Nakshati Adurat Api Shurapani
Navikriya Vishvasurit Sakasya
Navikriya Vishvasurit Sakasya
Samyena Vitapimatis Tavapi
Samyena Vitapimatis Tavapi
Mahadvimanat Swapritati Madri
Mahadvimanat Swapritati Madri
Nakshati Adurat Api Shulapani
Nakshati Adurat Api Shurapani. Not Vikriya, material transformation, Vishvasurit, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is a friend to everyone. Sakasya, of you, the friend. Samyena, because of your mental equilibrium. Vita Abhamati, who has completely forsaken the bodily concept of life. Tava, you, happy, indeed. Mahat Vimanat, of insulting a great devotee. Swakritat, from my own activity. He, certainly. Madre, a person like me. Nakshate, will be destroyed. Adurat, very soon. Api, certainly. Shulapani, even though as powerful as Lord Shiva Shulapani. Translation. O my dear Lord, you are the friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is a friend of all living entities. You are therefore equal to everyone, and you are free from the bodily conception. Although I have committed an offence by insulting you, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. You are fixed in your determination, but I have committed an offence. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay due to my offence at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Please repeat. O my dear Lord, you are the friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
You are the friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
who is a friend of all living entities.
who is the friend of all living entities.
You are therefore equal to everyone,
You are therefore equal to everyone.
and you are free from the bodily conception.
You are free from the bodily conception.
Although I have committed an offence by insulting you,
Although I have committed an offence by insulting you,
I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult.
I know that there is no loss of gain due to my insult.
You are fixed in your determination,
You are fixed in your determination.
but I have committed an offence. Because of this,
Because of this,
even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva,
even though I may be strong as Lord Shiva,
I shall be vanquished without delay
I shall be vanquished without delay.
due to my offence at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava.
Due to my offence at the lotus feet of Vaishnava.
Prabhupada Vaishnava Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maharaja Rupina was very intelligent and conscious of the inauspicious effects arising from insulting a Vaishnava. He was therefore very anxious to be excused by Jad Bharat. Following in the footsteps of Maharaja Rupina, everyone should be very cautious not to commit an offence at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur in the Chaitanya Bhagavat Madhya Lila 13 says, Shulapani samayadi bhakta nindakare bhagavata pramana tathapi shigra mari. Hena Vaishnaviri Ninda Sarvagyahai Sajanira Adhapata Sarva Shastra Gai. Even if one is as strong as Lord Shiva, who carries a trident in his hand, one will nonetheless fall down from his spiritual position if he tries to insult a Vaishnava. That is the verdict of all Vedic scriptures. He also says this in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam Madhya 22. Vaishnavira ninda karike beke yaragana tara raksha samarthya nahika kona jana shulapani samayati Vaishnaviri ninde tathapiha nashayaya kahi shastra bindi iha na maniyaye sujana nindakai janme janme sapit papishta daiva dushamari. One who blasphemes a Vaishnava cannot be protected by anyone. Even if a person is as strong as Lord Shiva, if he blasphemes a Vaishnava, he is sure to be destroyed. This is the verdict of all Shastras. If one does not care for the verdict of the Shastras and dares blaspheme a Vaishnava, he suffers life after life because of this. Thus ends the Bhakti-Yunta purpose of the 5th canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Discussion Between Jagannath and Maharaja Rukmini. So it's a very heavy verse and a heavy purport. It's like Maharaja Rukmini, he comes to the point where he realizes that he's committed some aparasam offence, because when he recognizes that Jagbara is a great elevated soul, then he realizes his mistake, that he insulted him in various words previously. So now he's very remorseful, and this is actually very good. This is a good sign of somebody who has some spiritual understanding, that if they feel they've committed some offence against the Vaishnava, then they ask for forgiveness. They realise that without this forgiveness, he's condemned, really. So, and there's many examples of this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Actually, there's many examples like this in the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada quotes the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and there's many examples in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because it's such an important point that has been stressed throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, to emphasise the point and to drive it home that this is not a good thing to do. Otherwise, we won't take it seriously. And so, in the Shastras, there's extreme examples of this. So there's many examples in the Bhagavatam, and one main one that comes to mind is the story of Durvasa Muni and Maharaja Ambarish. And Durvasa Muni was a great yogi, and Maharaja Ambarish was a great king, but he was a great devotee. And he had been fasting for Ekadashi, and he was going to break his fast, but because Durvasa Muni had come at that time, and he had to, because Durvasa Muni was a guest, then he had to serve his guest first, but Durvasa Muni decided to go for a bath in the Yamuna. And meantime, the breakfast time was coming to an end, so Maharaja Ambarish didn't know what to do, so he consulted the Brahmins and says, what should I do? How can I break my fast and still consider it, it'd be okay? So they told him to drink some water. So Maharaja Ambarish took some water to break his fast, and he waited till Durvasa Muni came so he could serve him his meal. But Durvasa Muni realised what had happened, and he became really angry and upset. So he decided to destroy Maharaja Ambarish by creating a demon. But when this demon was created, then the Sudarshan Chakra came and killed that demon. And the Sudarshan Chakra of the Lord started chasing Durvasa Muni all over the universe. And Durvasa Muni went to Lord Brahma and asked for some shelter, and Lord Brahma said, I can't help you, I'm sorry, you committed an offence, so you need to go to Lord Shiva. So we went to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva said, I'm sorry, I can't help you either, because I can't do anything. If the Sudarshan Chakra is chasing you, I haven't got the power to help you. So then Durvasa Muni went to Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. He went to Lord Vishnu, and he begged for some help. And Lord Vishnu said actually, the devotees are so dear to me, they're in my heart and I'm in the hearts of the devotees, and they don't know anything but me and I don't know anything but them, so I can't, the only way you can be forgiven is if you take shelter of that Vaishnava and beg for forgiveness from that Vaishnava that you've offended. So then the Vashtamuni went back to Maharaja Ambrish and fell at his lotus feet and prayed, begged for forgiveness for his offence, and that's how he got forgiven, and the Sudarshan Chakra stopped chasing him after that. So this is a great example in Bhagavatam, and there's many examples like this where the Lord even can't forgive. For example, there's the story of Jagai Madai that we heard recently, and that's described in both Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavatam. And when Lord Nityananda was hit on the head by Madai with a clay pot, Lord Chaitanya became really angry to the point where he was ready to kill them with the Sudarshan Chakra. But it was only because Lord Nityananda intervened and they were saved, and they both begged for forgiveness from Lord Nityananda, and then Lord Chaitanya accepted them and gave them initiation. So it's such a, Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful incarnation, but here he displayed his anger, and there's many instances where Lord Chaitanya displays his anger when devotees are being criticised or devotees are being offended. So the result, the effect of committing Vaishnava Aparad is we lose our attachment for Krishna, we lose taste for chanting the holy names and service. So that's why it's very important that we, quickly as possible, we get free from this offence. Because if you look at the offences against the holy name, the very first offence is to blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. So that is actually the greatest offence. And Srila Prabhupada explains that devotees, he says that devotees that the offence afflicts the devotee's attachment to Krishna in proportion to the severity of the offence. So according to how great our offence is, that's how much we'll suffer for it. And it means that we will lose. It destroys our taste for chanting the holy names. It destroys our bhakti creeper. And it's described actually as a mad elephant offence by Lord Chaitanya. He describes it as the hati mata. So if we have, so we're trying to grow this creeper in our heart of pure devotion, and but if you put, so we're like a gardener, we're trying to cultivate this nice creeper, but an offence against the Vaishnava is like a mad elephant who's just come into the garden and he's just destroyed this creeper completely. So that's why it's and then that way the creeper just dries up and it doesn't bear any flowers or fruits. So it's actually destroyed our bhakti creeper. So that's why it's so important that we kind of fence it without committing any offences, so that our creeper can grow nicely. So if we always bear in mind that the importance of offering respect to devotees and advanced devotees, then we will always have a taste for the holy names. We want, and our attachment for Krishna will grow nicely. And in that way, if we learn to glorify devotees, and there was a nice example in Chaitanya Bhagavatam, one devotee had been criticising another devotee, and he didn't know what to do, so he asked Lord Chaitanya, what do I do? And Lord Chaitanya said that with that very mouth that you've criticised the devotees, then glorify them, praise them, and that way you get free from your offence. So that's a nice way of actually overcoming the offence, that we praise that devotee that we criticised and glorify them. So this way we can actually get free from the offence and also asking for forgiveness. So we may have an offensive mentality or a critical mentality, and we may not be able to control that. But then, if we can rectify it by being repentant and asking for forgiveness, then that will actually nullify that offence. So sometimes we may have to do that more than anything else. So the reason we may have this mentality is because we don't realise how dear devotees are to Krishna. And if we read the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, then it's a very nice chapter, because Krishna is describing devotional service and what it is. And the last few verses are really nice, because Krishna describes that who is actually dear to him. And Krishna says in many verses that, one is a kind friend to all living entities, is not envious, who is equal in happiness and distress, so forth and so forth. He says, such a person, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. And so he continues for a few verses, and he says that, those who are not, who are pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, very dear to me, one who neither laments nor desires, who neither rejoices nor grieves, such a devotee is very dear to me. And one is like equal to friends and enemies, whose equipoise in honour and dishonour, heat and cold, happiness, distress, fame and infamy, who's fixed in knowledge and engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me. But then in the last verse of the chapter, Krishna says, those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making it the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So in this verse, Krishna is describing that devotees who've given their lives to Krishna consciousness, who've dedicated their life and are fully surrendered to him, they are very, very dear to him. So sometimes there's different things that are described in the Bhagavad Gita, and but actually, they're both important, but there's primary characteristics and there's secondary characteristics. So ideally, devotees should be steady in both devotional practices like chanting and hearing and serving, and the display of qualities, of Vaishnava qualities, saintly qualities. But the primary characteristic of devotion is actually the steadiness in hearing and chanting and serving. And the secondary characteristics is the qualities like humility, tolerance, compassion. But what happens is we may find some devotees who are very humble and tolerant, and but they're not steady in their primary characteristics. They're not steady in their practices of hearing and chanting and dedicating their life to Krishna. But they have these nice qualities, like these secondary characteristics, like humility and tolerance. And but these qualities, these good qualities they may not be because of devotional service. They may be because of some piety they haven't had in the previous life, and they're just having some good karma and good piety. So that's why they have these nice qualities. But other devotees may exhibit intolerance or pride or anger, but they show all signs of steadiness in their primary characteristics, like hearing and chanting and dedicating in the preaching mission. So they are actually serious in their Krishna consciousness, but they may not display secondary characteristics of humility and tolerance, these kind of qualities. But these qualities will gradually develop because they're steady and they're serious in their Krishna consciousness. So that's why Krishna is here. He's giving all the secondary characteristics, and he says devotees are like this and this, they're very dear to me. But ultimately, he says those who are very, very dear to me are those who are practicing very seriously and have surrendered and dedicated their life to serving me with complete faith. So we have to understand that, we see things in the proper perspective. And actually we need to be serious and sincere these are like, and steady in our sadhana. These are primary characteristics. And we also have to be humble and tolerant to get free from the rough edges we have. We all have like rough edges that we need to be kind of smoothed, that need to be smooth. So this will enable us to become an ideal devotee, like if we have both the primary and the secondary characteristics. So the test of steadiness is our fixed determination in chanting Hare Krishna without offence. That's actually the test of our steadiness. And this will give us spiritual strength to quickly rise to the state of Nishtha. So we have to be steady mainly in this, because by steady determination, by fixed determination chanting the Hare Krishna mantra without offence, then we'll definitely develop all the nice qualities, all these qualities of humility and tolerance and compassion. And Srila Prabhupada writes, he said, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we have fixed 16 rounds as the minimum so that the Westerners will not feel burdened, because, in India, devotees generally chanted 64 rounds. That was considered the norm. But when Prabhupada came to the West, then his Western disciples, he did introduce it at the start, but the Western disciples couldn't take it up. It was too long. It was taking all day to do the rounds, and didn't have the attention span or the inclination and the steadiness to be able to chant that many rounds. So Prabhupada reduced it to 16, so that it could facilitate the Western devotees. And he says these 16 rounds must be chanted and chanted loudly so that one can hear himself and others. So this is actually Prabhupada's main instruction, was to chant 16 rounds and follow the regulative principles. So if you become steady in that, then all the other qualities will gradually develop. So we don't have to artificially separately try to develop them, but if we are focused on these sadhana and our chanting and hearing, then by that purification we will develop the other qualities. And the easiest thing is to have physical steadiness with the body, because we can do a certain service quite steadily because it's like a physical activity, and it's easier to control the physical body than our words, our speech, or our mind. So, and the next steadiness is japa. So if we can be steady in our japa, steadily chanting 16 rounds, steady in preaching Krishna consciousness, then with our words, then that's actually the second stage that we become steady in. And then finally, the most difficult thing is to become steady in our mind, to fix the mind in Krishna without deviation. So that's actually the most difficult. But if we start with the physical, at least we're doing the right things at the right time, then eventually we will speak, we'll become steady in our speech, we'll become steady in our japa, in our kirtan, and then we'll also eventually we'll become steady in our mind. And we'll be able to, so the steadiness will become complete when all our body, our words and our mind are all, fixed in spiritual steadiness, spiritual functions. So it's a gradual process, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's very, very unlikely in our present condition that we can do this overnight. It may take many years to become steady in our service, and steady in our chanting, and steady in our mind. So we have to have a lot of patience to practice spiritual life. And patience is a virtue, they say, and it definitely is in spiritual life, because we need a lot of patience and confidence and determination. So Srila Prabhupada said that the test of steadiness is a fixed determination chanting Hare Krishna without offence. And so we have to try to practice how to chant without offence. Because that's our greatest difficulty, is to chant without offence. If we can come to the point of chanting without offence, then we'll come to the point of Nishtha. and we'll be able to chant Navabhas. At least we will not be chanting offensively. So if we can look at the 10 offences against the holy name, we can try to avoid these 10 offences, then it will help us greatly in our spiritual life. And Lord Chaitanya is saying that if we become offenceless in our chanting, then we can chant constantly. This is actually the test. If we can chant constantly, it means that, we have got the qualities of Trinada, peace and Ichana. But if we don't have a taste for chanting, or our taste is lessening, then we have to analyse why is my taste for chanting decreasing? Why is my taste for service decreasing? And it's generally because we've committed some offence. The word aparad, apa, is deviating. It means deviating from. So we're deviating from Radha. Radha is Srimati Radharani, and aparada means we're deviating from Radha. So we're like our attachment to spiritual practices is decreasing. So we have to analyse ourselves and rectify ourselves really quickly, so we don't, become more and more distracted by other things. So it's juggling at how to be able to serve and chant and offer all respects to the Vaishnavas without expecting any in return, and having a proper attitude, because it's all dependent on our attitude, our mindset. So we have to develop the proper attitude towards devotees and treat them with respect. So sometimes it's easy to see faults because Kali Yuga is emotional faults, so it's not very difficult to see faults. We're surrounded by them. But if you can overlook the faults and see the good, then that's actually a great thing. And it's just like the moon. It gives off so much effulgence. It's so beautiful, but it may have some little marks on it, the craters, like black spots on it. But nobody really notices the black spots because the moon is so effulgent that it's beautiful. So in the same way, a devotee may have few faults, but if he's wholeheartedly engaged in devotional service and the volumes of devotional service that devotee has done, then we should see that and not the little faults they may have, because they're very insignificant compared to the volumes of devotional service that they performed. So we need to see the proper perspective, just like the moon. The moon's giving off so much effulgence, and if we just focus on the little spots on the moon, then it's not very intelligent. It's not very good, because we can see that actually the moon's giving effulgence, and it's so beautiful and it's so bright. It's giving so much light to the world, and it's having such a nice cooling effect. So we need to see that and not focus on all the little small things that are maybe they're all insignificant compared to that. So is there any questions or comments?
I heard it said that you see the world as we are, not as it is. So if we find it very hard to appreciate something, it may not be that there's something that's hard to appreciate, it may be that we find it hard in general to have appreciation. So it's more an indication of what's going on with ourselves and what's going on around us.
So it's a mirror reflection of our own faults.
Yeah, I was talking to the audience tonight and was complaining about things, I was criticising certain things. And I was saying, if you change the way you look at something, then the thing you look at will change. But you'll need to change the way you look at it, So we can do that. We can change the way we look at things. Srila Prabhupada said the needle the pen was being criticised by the sieve for having a hole. So the fact that the sieve is quite sensitive to holes would indicate it's got quite a lot itself, you know. So if the sieve was to look at itself instead of the needle, it would realize, oh wow, got quite a lot of holes myself.
Yeah. So we have to practice. I mean, this because of so much conditioning, it's difficult, but we have to put it into practice that we start seeing the good and not the faults in others.
Also, Maharaja was saying if you can spot it, then means you've got it. And what he was meaning was if you get upset about something, like you could see somebody was like saying really fat, and it doesn't bother you, you know. But if you're very upset about that, then that's an indication that you're afraid of being like that, or you are like that yourself. And if you can spot something and it's very upsetting to you, that's more an indication of some problem you've got. Otherwise, you would just observe certain things and just think, yeah, they're like this, and that's just the way they are. It wouldn't upset you, you know. You'd maybe try and help them in some way, you know.
Yeah, to overcome that, we can try to serve that person that we would be critical of, or in some way help, do some nice menial service for them, so that we can overcome our wrong attitude. We have to see the bigger picture and see from Krishna's perspective as well. And as I said, like here, Krishna saying in the Bhagavad Gita that, the pure devotees are very, very dear to me. So it's just like natural, like if somebody, is critical towards us, we may not be so bothered. But if somebody criticizes somebody that we really love, then we actually get more upset. So in the same way, Krishna, we may have, may offend Krishna, but he may not take that too seriously, but if we offend his devotee, then he takes it really seriously, and he definitely, does something about it. So it's a very important, aspect of devotion service, that we offer respects to Vaishnavas. That's the general etiquette that's described in Nectar Instruction. Different ways of respecting different types of Vaishnavas. Nectar Instruction describes that to one who's chanting Hare Krishna, we can offer respects within the mind. To one who's worshipping the deity fully engaged in devotional service, we offer respects without offering obeisances. And to one who's completely devoid of criticizing others, one who's like a spiritual master, then we dedicate our life and we inquire submissively and serve that devotee. So this is like the different types of devotees that we can render service to, so it keeps us in this respectful mood towards all devotees. In fact, even to non-devotees, because they're still devotees, they're just covered over. And so all souls should be offered respects, because they're all part and parcel of Krishna. So, but then surely those who have dedicated their lives to Krishna, they should be offered more respect. So this is actually, we have to learn how to develop this mood of respect. And Vedic culture was a culture of respect. You'd offer obeisances even to your mother and father. That's out of respect. This is a culture of respect. So is to learn how to become cultured in that way. So it's a work in progress. We need to develop. We may have all the qualities of like our sadhana may be really good, and our steadiness on hearing and chanting. But if we're proud or intolerant, then we make them offences. So then they'll actually lose their attachment for devotional service in some form or another. So that's actually not very good, not very beneficial for our spiritual life. So that's why these other qualities are necessary, so that we can have the proper moods, so we don't commit offences. So we need both the primary and secondary characteristics of being a devotee to help us. It's an ideal, to live an ideal life of a devotee. Yes,
But I think sometimes the more important thing is like to respect ourselves and know our limitations as well. Because if we don't do it, we actually end up overwhelmed, let's say, for things that we have to do or people ask us to do, and then maybe we don't know how to deal with that, and we end up like disrespecting or offending someone, but it's not actually because the person wants to, but maybe they are not respecting themselves, their limitations, and what they actually can do. They try to overdo things that, at the moment they cannot.
It's a good point. Yeah. So then we have to reveal that in confidence to that person, that this is the limitations, so that they understand our limitations and how much we can and cannot do, so that they can understand that this, they don't give us too much, and be able to. So we have to understand, we are respecting and compassion in ourselves, and then we can understand how much I can do. And we have to have a balanced life. We can't, run ourselves into the ground. So there has to be some balance, and we have to have nourishment in many different ways. Our body needs nourished, our mind needs nourished, and our soul needs nourished. So we have to have a balance so that we can actually be able to function properly.
Yes.
So we have to, in a respectful way, explain the situation, our limitations, so that they can respect that as well. But we have to be able to explain it and in a proper way, and in a mature way to the person, and convey that, communicate that, because some people don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody else understands our limitations. Only we know our limitations. So we have to communicate that to others, so that we don't commit offences in our mind, thinking badly of that person. Thank you. Yes, Kate.
So if a devotee offends us or upsets us, how can we protect ourselves from offending or upsetting them back, like even in our mind? How can we see that like that? How can we take it in a way that it doesn't, like we don't make any offensive?
Can you repeat that, sorry?
Yeah, so if a devotee offends us or upsets us, how can we protect ourselves from offending them back or upsetting them back?
Yeah, we have to learn to forgive, and we have to learn to ask for forgiveness. So that's a very big topic in itself. If we hold resentments, then it's going to really, hinder our progress in devotional service. Because resentments means that basically we're saying to Krishna that actually this is more important than you. We're not leaving any space for Krishna to enter our heart, because we just have these lower emotions in our heart, and we're cultivating them, we're storing them up in our heart. So we have to practice learning to forgive. That's one of the things that is vital. It's like, just part of becoming a devotee, to learn to forgive and ask for forgiveness, because and that way we'll be safe, and it is difficult, because we have a mind, we have false ego, and it's a very difficult thing to do, but if we practice it, then it really helps. And I've been doing these forgiveness meditations, and I can share with you sometime if you want. It's a really nice way of learning to forgive others, and also seeing that, you know, they may not be intentionally doing it, they may have, you know, a conditioning, and they may have their difficulties, so we have to, you know, learn to forgive the things that people do. And also, if we may have committed many offences to other devotees or other persons, you know, and we have to learn to ask for forgiveness. So it keeps us humble.
But communication is very important as well, right? Like, for example, if someone feel they are offended, maybe they can ask if something happened. Like, I'm gonna use like personal example. Like other day, Rinda came to my room and say, "Oh, are you upset with me?" And say, "No, why?" "Oh, because you didn't smile to me today." And say, "No, you didn't do anything. It's just like something from me." She could be thinking all day I was upset with her and having things on her mind all day, and nothing had happened. You know, it was something from, you know, I was upset with personal things. And I just like didn't smile as I always do, but was like nothing with her. So maybe if we try to be more, you know, try to ask things, because, you know, it's nothing, something like, it's not always about like another person. Sometimes it's about ourselves as well. So
yeah, that's a good point. To ask or communicate. If we feel we've done something wrong, then we can ask them, have I done something wrong? Please forgive me if I have committed an offence. Or if you think somebody else, that you've offended somebody else, or if they've offended you, then yeah, if there's some communication, then we can overcome it. But if there's no communication, then we're just going to keep thinking about it.
Yeah,
the wrong thing. And it could be an innocent mistake, you know. Yes, Felix.
How do you help someone who's become ingrained in being offensive? Like it may be a previous friend or someone that's a devotee, but they're really struggling with being offensive, and it's ingrained in their character, and they're on a bit of a spiral with it. So what's the best thing to do if you're compassionate for that person, but you don't want to go too near them, because then it could rub off on oneself. So how do you help someone who's in that situation? As King Rahugana?
Pray for it.
It is, yeah.
That's the best, because we may not be able to do anything for them personally, and they may affect us with their criticism. So we pray for their welfare, and Krishna can help them.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Guru Goswami in that instruction, he gives 6 kind of proactive ways to, like Maharaja was saying, you can go and communicate with them. So communication is one, hearing and inquiring confidentially, giving and receiving gifts, offering and accepting food. So through those 6 loving exchanges, you become proactive in fixing any mistakes or offences that were, or upset that may have been committed. You know, then the person doesn't, he just thinks, oh, everything's okay again, now you give me a nice gift, and then he realises you still like him, you still have affection for him, you know. So that's one way. And then the other point you made, that Goswami's giving a 3-tiered level of respect. So we can respect everyone in the mind. If they're chanting Hare Krishna, then we give them respect in the mind. And then if they're actually fully dedicated, we do something physical, like pay obeisances to them. And then for those that are devoid of propensity to criticize, we respect them, we pay obeisances, plus we trust them to be able to open up. So the onus is also on us as to how we navigate in a community of devotees that are all on different levels, but all of them were showing respect to, all of them were giving gifts to, were offering food, and then for the special exchanges for those devotees that we trust, those ones we have an intimate contact with, and we open up to them. So it's very important when you come into the society of devotees that you are able to discriminate. Those ones who respect the mind, those ones who make businesses, and those ones whenever any problems are going to reveal the mind and take shelter from
them. So the respect is the most important thing, and that's what the Trinity piece in each verse is, that we offer all respects to others without expecting any in return. So although it's a very high level of devotional service, still that's what we're aspiring for. That's the whole point. We're performing sadhana bhakti, so we're trying to develop these kind of qualities so we can chant purely, we can chant without offence, and that's actually our key to the higher levels of devotional service. We can't reach Ruchi or Shakti Bhava if we're chanting offensively. We can't reach these higher levels. So at least if we come to the stage of Nishta, we're able to chant without offence, and we're cultivating the proper attitude and respect towards devotees on various levels. Then that's our key to success in devotional service. So that's why it's so important. It's such an important part of devotional service, because the key is to be able to chant purely. That's how we're going to develop pure love for Krishna. And how to chant purely is we have to chant without offence, at least. So we have to avoid committing offences against devotees and avoid all the 10 offences and chant attentively. And that way we can actually come to that point. So it's a very, very sensitive process, We have to really cultivate it nicely and not... and we learn from our mistakes. That's the whole point. Because we're not so intelligent, we don't, here, personally speaking, I have to go through the school of hard knocks to actually and experience all the difficulties and all the reactions, and then come to my senses, actually, this is not a good idea, I don't want to go through this again. But this is how we are, personally speaking. I have to experience it myself and then realise my mistake and then rectify myself. So it'd be easier if I could just hear and apply the process very quickly, but it's not. I'm not so intelligent, so sometimes we have to go through many, many times the same thing until we learn a lesson. It's just material conditioning. I personally have anyway. You always need to be better than me at this. So, is there anything at last points to conclude? So the conclusion is, Laura.
I really like something else that Mahatma Prabhu was saying about our tolerance with people or a situation. It's our need, it's our expectation. So it's got nothing to do with the situation or the person, but everything to do with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a nice point. So we have to learn to be tolerant and humble. So the person, other devotees, are actually helping us to be that, because we have to tolerate them, so it's helping us to become tolerant. So they're actually our teachers, our gurus, because if they weren't like that, we wouldn't learn tolerance. So they're helping us to become tolerant. So in that sense, they're there to get rid of our rough edges, so that we can actually become more of a devotee ourselves.
And also Krishna will speak through the devotee to tell us what we need to hear and to show us what we need to do.
Yeah. So that's why Krishna's devotees are so valuable, because Krishna's not going to really tell us directly himself. He generally doesn't. He generally directs through the devotees. So even if devotees have faults, that's actually to help us get rid of our faults. So it's like Krishna's perfect. Everything's perfect and complete when Krishna's involved. He makes the perfect arrangement for the correct devotee to help us on our journey, and that devotee is somebody who's going to help us to become tolerant and humble, because they're bringing that out in us. It's bringing that out, and it's making us realise that actually I'm very intolerant, I'm very impatient, I need to deal with this. So that's why it's important to have that association, so that we can actually see ourselves where we're lacking. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the nice discussion and nice comments. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srimad ki jai,
Yeah.